Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen bug like criminals, godly avatars, and adventures in babysitting. But we're going to kick things off this week with Aliens vs. Avengers number 3, written by Jonathan Hickman with artwork by Asad Ribic. This is incredibly exciting, which is surprising to most people considering that the idea of mashing up the Aliens property and Avengers usually feels like it would be a cash grab, but this actually feels like they're playing with big, bold ideas. Now, is it going to impact the 616 universe? Probably not. But I'm kind of okay with that because the story that we're getting is compelling, it's exciting, and it's things that we would not be able to get in the 616 universe. This is Hickman really playing the hits with all of the different properties that he's had a hand in within the Marvel Universe, whether it was his time with the Avengers, his time with the Fantastic Four, and his time with the X-Men. As you can see that every one of these things that he touches really harkens back to his time on that particular title. We see Mr. Sinister in particular do some incredibly nasty things here. It could be the most devious we've ever actually seen that character be within these pages here. And Asad Ribic does a fantastic job of rendering all these characters as well. The pairing between Hickman and Asad Ribic just kind of works wonders. You could tell by that creative team, if it's there, you already know it has the potential to be something really, really special. This kind of is that. So if you're not reading it, consider picking this up. Next up, let's talk Daredevil number 18, written by Saladin Ahmed with artwork by Aaron Cooter. So it feels like after 18 issues, we're finally starting to get to the culmination of this storyline that's been happening for the better part of 2 years now. And it's time that we reach the end game. It's time that we get finality with this because it has been a very slow burn with the entirety of this storyline, considering that it's been really Matt's journey to become a little bit more of the Matt Murdock that we know and love prior to his time in hell and his resurrection and now being Father Matt as opposed to Lawyer Matt. Aaron Cooter's artwork in this is really fantastic, and that's kind of like the best part about this book and the worst part about this book. When he was announced as the artist, it was exciting because I love his style. I feel like it really fit well with the character of Daredevil, but we just didn't get it consistently enough within the pages of this book. Outside of me griping over the longevity of his time or lack thereof, I can say that this issue, every single page is rendered really, really wonderfully. His artwork is crisp, it's clean. I love his use of line weight. It really gives a nice weight and a nice action to the characters when he's drawing them. We see that Foggy has been possessed by one of the demons that Matt's been fighting over and over and over. And there's creative ways that he's been tackling these things, but again, this has been taking a very long time for these all of these things to come to a culmination. It's okay. I feel like we're finally getting to an exciting part of this arc. Again, I feel like it might be a little bit too late though. So maybe if you're jumping into Daredevil, this might be a good time to start, dipping your toes in and seeing what everything is all about. If you've been along for the long ride though, this is going to be a little bit more so of what we've already gotten. We have the DD double dip this week, so let's talk Daredevil Unleash Hell number 2, written by Erica Schultz with artwork by Valentina Pinti. So this is a red band book, and it's billed as such, and it's supposed to be ultra violent and bloody and gory. And I can finally say we kind of get that a little bit within the pages of this book. There are some truly grotesque moments here. There's one in particular where our superpowered villain here, a different version of Muse, punches a character in the face, and let's just say that not too much is left after that punch happens. Erica Schultz has really crafted a really good voice for Elektra Nachios. I feel like she has a good grasp on the character's motivations, and who that person is. It's just that I feel like this is very clearly something that is supposed to create synergy with the Daredevil Born Again story that's coming out on Disney Plus, with the character of Muse being part of that. While Muse in the comic books has already died, and I feel like this is a very hokey way of bringing that character back. It doesn't feel quite right. It feels like it's leaning way too childlike comic booky. But if you're also billing this as a red band book, then that also doesn't feel quite right either. So it's like this kind of like jarring, mixed up feeling of what kind of comic this is supposed to be. The character voice is right. The storyline can be compelling during times. It's just that the mission statement doesn't know what it wants to be. So therefore, it kind of falls a little bit flat. All right, our next book is going to be G.I. Joe number 4, written by Joshua Williamson with artwork by Tom Riley. It's just big bombastic fun, man. They get the assignment of this book, which is that it's supposed to be something that is fun. This harkens back to the days when we were playing with these toys back in the 80s and there was a cartoon. It doesn't take itself too seriously. However, it doesn't like talk down to the reader as well. It's not necessarily aimed at a child. That's not to say that a child could not read this. I think this is a really just fun, exciting book. You want some kind of page turn each and every like turn that you have that delivers excitement and bold action. And that's what you get from this book. Tom Riley is doing a fantastic job with every single like action set piece that Joshua Williamson is delivering within the script. And on top of that, Jordi Belair is doing a fantastic job on the coloring as she's really like starting to master this like offset printing style that she started within the pages of Birds of Prey. Right here, it totally works. It harkens back to those 80s feelings, not only of the cartoon, but particularly of comic books of that time. So again, they totally get the assignment. The Joes are basically, they've been pushed back on their heels, but now they're starting to fight back now that they have a good understanding of Cobra and what they're trying to accomplish and what they're doing. Duke makes some decisions in the pages of this book here that has everyone questioning what is truly happening here. But as we know, Duke always has a plan here. We just need to see that actually take place. So overall, G.I. Joe is a heck of a lot of fun. Next up, let's talk Laura Kinney Wolverine number 3, written by Erica Schultz with artwork by Giadatta Belvisio. This feels like we're retreading a lot, and it's probably an issue that's within the X office within Marvel, because I feel like we have the same storyline, the same basic premise for a storyline that's being delivered in a multitude of different books now, between Psylocke, between Laura Kinney Wolverine, between Phoenix, between Magic, and it's being executed on varying levels depending on who we're getting here. And the only exciting thing I can really say about this is that we have the same writer that was writing Daredevil Unleash Hell. And in the pages of this book, we have Elektra being one of the basically co-characters that's helping Laura accomplish her mission. So as I said with Daredevil, she has a good voice for the character, and that harkens true in this as well. The problem is that Laura Kinney in her own book feels like she is a set piece as opposed to the main character. There needs to be some kind of character development and character growth, and maybe this is me just not enjoying what's happened since Krakoa, where she was able to be aged up and she got into a relationship with a certain individual, and there was a lot of growth and a lot of new motivations that came into play. And since then she's been de-aged back, and it feels like they don't know what to do with this character. It could be interesting. It can so easily be interesting, and we've seen that take place. I need something big, something bold. I need something new from this book, though, that's going to make me care for this character more. We need the development to happen. It's not, unfortunately, happening within the first 3 issues of this book so far. Time will tell where they go from here. Next up, we have New Gods number 3, written by Ram V with artwork by Evan Cagle and Riccardo Federici. So I think that Ram V is doing something special in this book and something unheralded, which is that he's taking Kirby ideas and Kirby history and really making it accessible. And I don't want to say easy necessarily, because by no means is it easy, but he's making it fun and he's building upon these ideas. Like he's building off of it, the foundation that Kirby laid for other writers and other creators, and he's really showing it a ton of respect. And I obviously, like, how do you do anything different when you talk about a name like Jack Kirby? There's a love and care for like the pantheon of characters that have been created within the fourth world here, particularly the New Gods, and Ram V is respecting all of these ideas. And it's great the balancing that happens within this book, because there's two things that are happening here. We have basically the history lesson parts of the book, which are handled by a separate artist here. In this particular issue, it's Riccardo Federici. We get to spend time with Metron and kind of see how the machinations of all these things are happening and how he thinks that things are going to play out one way, maybe they work out another way. There's a lot of things happening in the background that basically he is maybe in the know about. And you learn more about the new gods as they go through that part of the storyline. The other part is like basically the A plot, where we have Mr. Miracle and Big Barda going to seek out this new god that they know has been born, as Orion set them on that path to basically say, you need to beat me, you need to find this child because Highfather set me out to have to destroy the child, and I don't want to have to do that. So we get to spend the A plot then being with Mr. Miracle and Big Barda as they go to one of their friends and they're trying to look for ways that they're going to be able to seek out this child. And they find basically a device that was meant to do one thing. It turns out the thing that it really does is tracks down basically the source information for these new god characters that are in the greater DCU. So it's going to be able to track down this character, and Big Barda and Mr. Miracle are going to have basically a resource to go find them. Really great stuff that's happening here. I like that they're able to basically hand off their child as well, because now there's a babysitting aspect of this. The person that created the device is also now going to be caring for the child here in the interim while they're out on their mission. Really fantastic artwork here, both again by Federici for the history lesson parts, by Cagle in the story A plots, and Ram V just making a very non-linear story feel as linear as it possibly could be to make sure that we're still along for the ride. And with our next issue, let's talk Nightwing number 123, written by Dan Waters with artwork by Dexter Soy. The best part about this book to me is that Nightwing is being written as this trustworthy character, like this person who is like just full of grace, full of charm, but most importantly, just incredibly trustworthy. And Dan Waters is making sure that like that comes through within the script. It comes through with the narration, and it comes through on each and every panel as he's trying to help out some of the criminals who have just basically fallen on bad times, right? They have no other resource other than crime to make a living. So he's trying to do his best to balance out, basically what it means to be a superhero, because it's not always just about punching criminals. Sometimes it's also offering a path that leads them out of needing that as a resource. Now, some of the criminals that we deal with in the pages of this book are mutated bugs as well that have basically the characteristics of a fly. And that's incredibly silly, right? But it's silly in a comic book way. So I can't be really incredibly mad about it. It is very, very silly, though. There's no two ways about that. So Dan Waters, I think he's doing a really good job within the pages of this book. My issue has always been with Dexter Soy's artwork, as it's been very hit or miss for me. It's not bad by any means, but there's just times where I feel like it's not hitting on all cylinders and it's not doing the things that I need from visual storytelling. It's not leading my eye and it's not making the image as compelling as maybe it needs to be. So overall, Nightwing, it's doing something that I really like, but it's not doing enough for me to like make me say it's like the best book of the week. Next up, let's talk Nullhunter number 5, written by Michael Walsh with artwork by Gustavo Vargas. So as we've talked about previously, this is all a retelling of the 12 feats or 12 labors of Hercules, all through the lens of a cyberpunk futuristic landscape. And what's happening here is that we're dealing with one of the labors here, the cleaning of the Aegean stables. And in the Herculean myth, basically he is set up for failure. A king calls to him and says, if you'll do this for me, we'll join your ranks and we'll be there for you. And the king knows that this is something that no one is going to be able to complete. All the while, Hercules finds a way to complete this, and the king wants to back out of his deal. And we see the same thing. Granted, it's not a stable he's cleaning in the pages of Nullhunter, though. It's actually a terraforming engine for an entire planet that has shut down, and Hercules, or Hercules stand-in, has to basically kickstart this engine. He does, and of course, the king, or in this case, the leader of this planet, doesn't want to fall into rank. And what happens is the sun ends up actually killing him the same way that it does in the actual Herculean myth, all in an effort to join the Olympian colony ranks, basically. So it's a really cool way of looking at some of the things that the Hercules stand-in character does, and even in the myth, He's out to do these tasks, he's taking on these labors to prove himself. All the while, there are consequences to the actions that he's taking, both for himself and for the people that are impacted through him doing these things. Gustavo's artwork on this is really fantastic. I love the way that he lays out a page and the panel work here. But most importantly, Becca Carey's lettering on here is absolutely stunning. I think that each time I see Becca Carey on a book, I'm starting to get more and more excited because the lettering that she brings to each one of these pages and each one of these individual books here, it really starts to stand out here in an individualistic way from each and every property that she's dealing with. But here, it definitely goes to show it's building on the myth part of it, it's building on the cybernetic, cyberpunk aspect of it, and it's really delivering the heartfelt message from our Hercules stand-in as well. So Nullhunter has turned out to be a really special, surprising book. Next up, let's talk Prairie Gods number 5, written and drawn by Shane Connery Volk. So this is the end of our anthology-esque series here, and I gotta say, this felt much smaller in scope, but it also didn't deliver on as many answers as I feel like each of the previous issues had done so. We're dealt with a character who basically finds themselves stranded after a plane crash and is being kind of hunted by a werewolf maybe or just a regular wolf itself, but it doesn't really do a good job of explaining what is really happening within the landscape of this character and how they got to this place and why this wolf is even hunting them. Now, we know from previous issues that it's really delved deep into supernatural stuff and it's really delved deep into sci-fi things, and this does an okay job at delivering those things. It just kind of falls flat a little bit on the explanation behind it. And I don't want things overly explained, but like you got to give me a little bit of something to understand kind of like what's making all the separate pieces of the story tick. I needed a little bit from that. Artwork continues to be stunning. If you're going to get this book for any reason whatsoever, I think it's always been the artwork first, story second. But this is the first time where I feel like the story didn't actually reach the same levels as the artwork had. So overall, it's good. This might actually read as a fantastic story collected because you're going to get to see the back and forth between all of these different storylines that are happening here. But most importantly, you're going to be able to take in the breathtaking artwork of Sean Connery Volk. So overall, you should definitely be willing to check this one out. All right, let's talk Spectrum number 3, written by Rick Quinn with artwork by Dave Chisholm. So I was kind of expecting after issue number 2 that we were going to start getting a little bit more focus within this story and we were going to start spending a little bit more time with both our main character from issue 1 and our main character from issue number 2. Lo and behold, this issue actually acts in very much the same way that the first 2 issues had, which is that you get to spend a lot of time with now another new character in a new time frame as pieces of the puzzle are starting to be presented. However, it's almost like when you're working with a puzzle and you know that you have 2 pieces that are going to be kind of within the same area, but they just don't quite fit yet and you don't have enough of the story yet. So this one, it felt a little bit meandery as we get, again, introduced to this new character far in the past here, kind of like a Dust Bowl era character. And it really plays with the idea of artwork itself or creativity itself. So it kind of strays away from the musical aspect of it, but it plays with the idea of how you interpret art and maybe kind of like what the future telling of artwork can be, how the things that haven't happened are truly a blank canvas. So there's a lot of cool things that they're playing with here. Our main characters from issue 1 and 2 do get introduced here, and we get a little bit of the backstory, but it's more of the back half of the issue here. So I wasn't mad at what they did here. I was just hoping that we kind of got a little bit more focus on what the meaning of the story truly is. We get a little bit of it. We'll see what issue 4 delivers here. Maybe if they kind of like, I don't know, deliver on what my expectations were. Time will tell on that. Overall, good issue. I just needed a little bit more of the focus. All right, with our next issue, we have Storm number 5, written by Mirawa Ayodele with artwork by Lucas Wernick. Dude, this series is taking bigger and bolder swings than I ever anticipated, and arguably more so than any other Marvel book within the greater continuity has been doing previously. This is like, it's kind of weird to say this. It almost feels like it's the spiritual sequel to the storyline that we got in Gods from Jonathan Hickman. They're playing with a lot of universal concepts within the Marvel universe here with the Living Tribunal and Eternity and Oblivion and the new way that they're rendered as well. That was, again, reintroduced within the pages of Gods. Storm is kind of acting as the avatar or the companion to one of these greater universal concepts. And there's basically a war that's brewing, or at least a trial by combat kind of thing that's happening, where Storm is going to be called upon to be the avatar for this combat. And we're seeing that she's taking on much greater powers and she's kind of evolving into this much greater being, and it's really really cool. Like the ideas of how they can explore this, there's a lot of meat on that bone. There's a lot of things that they're going to be able to do, and it's even more so exciting knowing that Lucas Wernick is the person that's drawing it all, because the ability that he's showing on the pages and the panels, it's absolutely stunning. He is like quickly becoming one of the best artists to draw Storm ever, period, full stop. It's really kind of awesome to take in. All this is all taking place in the backdrop of what we've seen on the previous issue, where she was previously with Doom by his side, kind of acting as, basically just talking things through with him, as she is the ambassador of all of mutants for the United States. So they're playing with that stuff, but all in the background here, these much bigger conceptual things are happening here. And it makes perfect sense considering that Doom is also the, sorcerer supreme now. So he can kind of sense and feel that all these things are ruminating in the background as well. Definitely check this out. Excellent issue. This is turning into something that I definitely did not expect. It's something that you should definitely like just at least dip your toes in, see if it's worthwhile, because I think this is going to be something that really changes the landscape of the Marvel universe. Next up, let's talk Ultimate Black Panther number 13, written by Brian Hill with artwork by Stefano Caselli. We get to learn a lot about the nature of vibranium within the Ultimate Universe in this issue in particular. And we kind of see maybe what's all been happening with T'Challa in the background as he teams up with the Sorcerer Supreme within the Ultimate Universe. And they basically draw out the essence of vibranium, which kind of takes the characteristics of this villainous monster that T'Challa has to do battle with. We see how this is influencing him and basically making him dream and like kind of, I don't know, steering his actions that he's been fighting over and over, making him much more of a violent character. You can see that the vibranium has their own, I don't know, their own story to tell. It has their own things that it wants to take place here. And it's almost as if it's not so much that he's the avatar of the Black Panther, but it's almost as if, I don't know, like the vibranium as using him as its own avatar. It's a really cool way to juxtapose those two ideas here. I'm really excited by what Brian Edward Hill is doing. I feel like the storyline is definitely ramping up. We're starting to get delivered more and more things here, especially now that we've recently gotten the fight between Moon Knight and T'Challa. This book is ramping up. It's starting, I've always been on board with it. It's starting to kind of start delivering on the ramifications of all the actions here. And I think it's something that, again, it's kind of like showing us building blocks of the Ultimate Universe. So definitely consider giving this one a shot. Next up, we have Ultimate Wolverine number 2, written by Chris Condon with artwork by Alessandro Capuccio. So we start to learn more about Wolverine, Logan in particular, and how he has kind of fallen into this new Winter Soldier-esque persona. But it's kind of cool how we get even more so a look back at the Maker and some of his machinations and how he's been controlling the greater Ultimate Universe and how he's bent it to his own will. We see some really crazy things that he does in here, where the Maker basically, knowing that he is Reed Richards and has his Reed Richards powers, goes full on T-1000 on a character. And I never thought I would say that it was going to be awesome to see that, but it kind of is. The artwork here is brutal. It's a slow burn story, as again, we're learning. We're just kind of picking up on memories of Logan's and kind of like getting back to a place where we can understand who he is, how he's under this control, and maybe start slowly building up on the stepping stones of how he is going to like basically break free of this control. Is very much in line with what we kind of saw from the 616 Wolverine. There's not a lot of big sweeping changes, but it's just enough to make it interesting and compelling. But it is a very slow burn. So what we get here is just the pieces. We don't know how it's going to be played out. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know that we have a Wolverine who is very much under the control of the Russian oligarch of this universe here, particularly with Colossus kind of making him bend the knee. So it's a cool story. It's great artwork. That's really the reason you should see it. But again, we see the machinations of the maker. So definitely check it out for that if you want to know more so about how this universe has become the way that it is. Next up, let's talk Weapon X-Men #1, written by Joe Casey with artwork by Chris Cross. This is just crazy fun. First, right out the bats here. This is just a crazy fun book. Very light on plots, but it is like mainlining pure Joe Casey craziness. The artwork in here is fantastic, and really, we're set forth on a storyline where we see that Wolverine is kind of meeting up with all these different people, and Cable calls them in and says, "Hey, we have to go on this mission." That's basically the plot. We still don't know what this mission is, but he starts gathering up all these characters. We know that it involves getting Thunderbird as part of their team here and maybe possibly rescuing him from some kind of influence that's happening. But all in all, that's like really what the plot is. You're here for the artwork and you're here for the zaniness because Joe Casey has a really great voice for the character of Deadpool who is in this book. Really kind of doesn't ramp up the silliness too much. It toes the line of keeping it fun and silly, but also keeping it bloody and deadly, right? Same thing with all the other characters here. We're delivered Chamber, who's basically morose and depressed, and everyone's kind of just kicking him in the ass the entire time, just kind of get him motivated to kind of be part of this team. Wolverine as well. He's kind of like the omniscient narrator. He kind of knows how everything is going to be playing out here, and he's just kind of like all along for the ride because, of course, he is. He's Wolverine. He's in the pages of almost every book within the Marvel universe. So again, you should be getting this for the fun. You shouldn't be looking for anything big and heavy and world changing. You should be getting this because you want to see some of our biggest, craziest characters just mess things up panel after panel after panel. That's what you're going to get in this book. And if you like that kind of thing, then definitely pick this up. All right, let's talk Wonder Woman #18, written by Tom King with artwork by Daniel Sampier. So I'm going to start with Daniel Sampier because I very honestly feel like he is amongst the absolute best artists that are putting out regularly monthly books each and every month. His artwork is stunning. I love it. There is no missed beats here. Everything seems so fresh, so freaking clean. It looks awesome. And like everything just feels compelling too. A lot of this book is all about Diana seeking out her vengeance. But in reality, it's her walking up to the White House to take on the powers that be. And it's a lot of walk, but it doesn't make it any less exciting the way that he's rendering these panels here. Now, Tom King is going to Tom King on this. There is a lot of narration within the pages of this book. It is not a quick, breezy read by any means, but it's exciting and it's bold. And I love the ideas that he's working with. And again, you feel the emotion of every single character that is in the pages of this book, whether it is the Sovereign who Wonder Woman is going after, whether it is still Wonder Woman reeling from the death from a previous issues here and like just again putting the hyper focus on the villainous characters within this book here as she seeks out her revenge. But also you have all the things that have been ruminating in the background here, some of the clashes that were always meant to happen. We start to see those things actually happen within the pages of this book. And even in the moments of levity when you're dealing with the other characters caring for Diana's new child, there's like fun aspects of even that are taking place here. But again, it's all for the betterment of the story here. You get those breather moments so that way when you're dealt the heavier moments here, they hit so much harder. Wonder Woman, each and every issue just keeps building on itself over and over and over in such a great way. This is making it one of arguably the most compelling books to be buying month over month. Next up, we have Zatanna #1, written and drawn by Jamal Campbell. So we're coming off of the heels of this really fantastic Black Label miniseries for Zatanna that had just come out from Mariko Tamaki and Javier Rodriguez, and I thought there's no way that this is going to be able to live up to the expectation now that I have for Zatanna as a character. But I gotta say, this kind of does. We're hitting different beats with this character, and it feels very different from that Black Label book. But I'm still equally as excited. Jamal Campbell is delivering artwork, first and foremost, that is absolutely stunning. All of the magical aspects here really pop and they really hit, and that's a testament to both the line work that he uses and his own coloring as he's basically full stop all over this book. There are aspects within the storyline here where also Zatanna is basically jumping into these different genres of movies here as she's kind of jumping from poster to poster. And the lettering by Ariana Maher was really great, as each one of these times that they're jumping, the lettering style changes, and it really goes to show that we're now in different worlds and different things are happening, and things should look very much different. So kudos to the entire team. We were delivered a really fantastic story that kind of takes, it's kind of like a fish out of water story where Zatanna, she has her powers and she knows her place within the greater DCU. However, now she's being delivered this new villainous character that is kind of, giving her new things, new challenges to look forward to. So I'm excited by this. We kind of have the onset of what our adventure is going to be. Time will tell where we go from here, but as far as an introductory issue, this one definitely worked. And with our runner-up book of the week, let's talk The Power Fantasy number 6, written by Kieran Gillen with artwork by Casper Wingard. So this is the beginning of the second arc of this storyline. And the first arc, we were kind of delivered all the main players and how they have this uneasy alliance and how they kind of just maintain this and how they make sure that, they're working together more so than be working apart from one another to make sure that the world basically stays spinning. This starts to plant the seeds of how they are now going to start working against each other, how there are cracks within these relationships, and how there's going to be machinations that are happening that are going to start pulling them further apart and putting the world itself into more and more danger. We have a big revelation here as Heavy, one of the characters who has like this cult like following, basically has a son, and this son is also an atomic, one of these superpowered beings. And we learn that being an atomic isn't necessarily a genetic thing, it's not something that's handed down from parent to child. So the fact that he has a child who also is superpowered is incredibly unique and incredibly challenging now because he's basically been held aside. No one knows that this character exists outside of the people that are within his cult. So the greater superpowers that are out there still don't even know that if Heavy is taken out, there's still more coming down the pipeline. All the while, too, we start to learn about some of the ways that even while they've had these uneasy alliances, there's been ways to stop characters like Aton from reading their minds or manipulating their actions. Every single person basically has a trick up their sleeve, basically, that they're trying to use and that no one truly knows about. But you're seeing that they're all more so on an even playing field because they have those tricks up their sleeves than any of them even realize. This is continuing to craft a compelling story about what the world could be like if these truly superpowered beings were among us and had influences over governments, societies, and the world at large. I love this storyline. It was absolutely fantastic to start to see, I guess, how the characters are starting to be pulled apart now that we know them and kind of know their motivations. And it's just an incredible vision of what a superpowered world would be like outside of the scope of the big two's world. And with our top comic of the week, let's talk Batman and Robin Year 1, number 5, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Chris Samney. I'm just continuing to have an incredible amount of fun within this book here as Chris Samney, like, dare I say, could probably, possibly, almost definitely be my favorite current working artist within the medium of comic books. The storytelling that he has here is absolutely stunning, and it's so incredibly cinematic as well through all of the beats that are happening here, whether it's Dick Grayson being kicked out of school day one, or Dick Grayson going out and basically betraying Bruce and starting to patrol crime on his own, which ends up having its own consequences. Mark Waid is crafting a story that feels in the vein of Year One. It feels like it fits within that time frame and that era. Again, the artwork by Chris Samney, also with his minimalistic approach, feels very telling, very fitting within that world too. And Mateus Lopez's colors are kind of like the glue that holds it all together, that melds all of these visuals and makes them feel of that time. It's a great storyline that is totally grounded within the greater Batman mythos as they play with big ideas here, as Clayface is one of the main villains within the pages of this issue here, but it all still boils back down to the crime family, the Grimaldis, and their influence over Gotham, and how Dick and Bruce have this basically the struggle of how they're going to approach these things and how they're approaching their own relationship, both as father and son and mentor and ward. It's it's just telling this incredibly compelling story here. It's definitely something that if you're not a fan of Batman, you should still read this. If you're not a fan of comics, you should still read this. It's the best book that I've read in a very long time, and I'm loving every single page of every single issue. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read, and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.